At the center of all love I stand, and from that center I, the soul, will outward move. From that center I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group and throughout the world. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group and
Good evening, everyone. This is Michael, and I'm substituting these days for Tuya. And so we have tonight our attracting money for hierarchical purposes meditation. And you know, it's an important matter, because it seems that money is spent on so many things, but on that which is truly essential, even for the salvation of humanity, inadequate sums are spent. They're available, but they're not spent correctly. So we'll try to remedy that situation in our lives and help others recognize the need. I'd like to read just a little bit here from the Tibetan about the lack of money for the work of the Christ, support for the work of the Christ. And, you know, we can spend some time on this particular section from the reappearance of the Christ, that great little book. So he deplores, really, the inertia of the average spiritually minded individual and also the other great obstacle, this lack of financial support. This is perhaps the major difficulty, and it appears at times to be an insuperable one, as if we, cannot really overcome it. This was written 75 years ago. It involves the problem of true financial trusteeship and the deflection of adequate sums of money into channels which will definitely aid in the work of preparation for the return of the Christ. It is closely tied up with the problem of right human relations, and I would say that how we spend our money has a lot to do with the degree of love we feel for our fellow human beings and the degree to which we feel unified with others and with the soul of humanity. So he goes on here, the problem is therefore a peculiarly hard one, for the spiritual workers of the world have not only to train people to give according to their means, but in many cases they have first of all to provide them with a motive so magnetic in its appeal that they must perforce give. They have also to provide the trust, foundation, or organization through which the given money may be administered. And I suppose this was one of the purposes of the Lucis Trust. It began to develop in that direction, especially in the third decade of Alice Bailey's work from 1940 to 49. So this presents them with a most impressively difficult task. The impasse which at present exists is not based only upon the novelty of raising funds in preparation for the return of the Christ, but it is based also upon the trained selfishness of the majority who own the world's wealth and who, even if they do give, do so because it fosters prestige and indicates financial success. Nevertheless, there are exceptions to this, but they are relatively few. That word trained selfishness is interesting, is it not? The tendency to want to give may have been there, but it's been trained out of people because that is the way it's considered best to operate and makes financial sense as the people are taught to regard the retention of money for themselves and basically for the fulfillment of their personality desires. So I'm going to kind of underline that, highlight that, because it's a concept we have to overcome. Generalizing, therefore, and oversimplifying the subject, we can assume that money finds its way into four main channels of expenditure. Number one, into the myriad homes in the world in the form of wages, salaries, or inherited wealth, and all this is at present most unevenly balanced, producing extreme riches or extreme poverty. Well, it's no different today than when this was written, and maybe worse. Then another channel of expenditure would be into the great capitalistic systems and monopolies, which are found as towering structures in most lands, whether this capital is owned by the government or by a municipality or by a handful of wealthy men or by the great labor unions, matters not. It's, oligarchical. Little of it is spent in the betterment of human living or for the inculcation of those values which lead to right human relations. And then number 3, into the churches and religious groups throughout the world. Many of these have proven themselves to be fundamentally materialistic, and when the personality ray of such an organization, such organizations, is the third ray, which rules money, and oftentimes the selfish personal use of money, the problem is intensified, and this, interestingly, is the case with a number of the churches. So he goes on, here again speaking in general terms, and at the same time recognizing the existence of a spiritually minded minority, the money is deflected into the material aspects of the work, into the multiplying and preservation of ecclesiastical structures, into salaries and general overhead, and only a percentage of it really goes into the teaching of the people, into a living demonstration of the simplicity, quote, as it is in the Christ, the cultivation of the mind as it is in Christ, and into the spreading of the fact of his return. For centuries, a definite doctrine of the churches. That return has been anticipated down the ages and might have occurred ere now, had the churches and religious organizations everywhere done their duty. So we'll put all this, in this color, indicating the alliance with the third ray and its tendency to support the personality of man and the personality of the churches. And finally, into philanthropic, educational, and medical work. All of this has been exceedingly good and greatly needed, and the debt of the world to the public-spirited men who have made these institutions possible is great indeed. The great philanthropic organizations. All of this has been a step in the right direction and an expression of the divine will to good lying behind love and goodwill. It is, however, frequently money misused and misdirected, and the values, the values developed have been largely institutional and concrete. They have been limited by the separative tenets of the donors or the religious prejudices of those who control the disbursement of the funds. In the quarreling over ideas, religious theories, and ideologies is the true assistance of the one humanity has been is overlooked. So that's the mixed bag there, a problem. The love of one's fellow human beings may have started the process, but it is compromised along the way, unfortunately. And I would like to, if I can, just bring that into another color. Okay. So, these are things we must have in mind. The fact remains that had the directing agencies through whose hands the money of the world is channeled any true vision of spiritual realities of the one humanity in the one world, and had their objective been the stimulation of right human relations, the mass of men everywhere would be responding to a future possibility very different from the present one. We would not be faced as we are today with the expenditures running into countless billions necessitated by the need to restore physically not only the physical bodies of countless millions of men, but entire cities, transportation systems, and centers responsible for the reorganization of human living. Well, I guess he's saying if we had channeled the money wisely, the great destructive wars would not have occurred, and all of this rebuilding would not have been necessary. So this is an indictment against our wisdom, or maybe an indication of the lack of it. So let's just say ending here. This is the ending on today, which is the 12th of July. And beginning on the 19th. We'll begin again and, keep this going, because it's such an important consideration. The great solution to so many of humanity's problems is precisely the reappearance of the Christ, the spending of financial resources in the direction that hierarchy would see those resources spent, and it will inevitably be for the upliftment of the entire human race, and not just for the luxury of the limited few. So our work is considerable. Now let's get into the meditation. We're certainly familiar with it, and some of us have been doing it a long, long time. It is found in Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2, along with the Reappearance of the Christ meditation. The two are linked so closely. So we begin by realizing our soul alignment. We are the soul in incarnation, and we represent a higher world in a way, a higher of a pair of opposites, a higher power. We represent the soul that is trying to make its expression felt on the dense physical plane, thus bringing in the reality of the kingdom, the fifth kingdom, the kingdom of souls, or the kingdom of God, if we wish to call it that. And so we realize the occult law that to those who give shall be given, so that they can give again. This is the power of the vacuum which nature abhors, and the resources of the higher worlds pour in for the one who is generous in supporting the appearance of the divine plan. So we'll ask ourselves some questions in the light of the soul, and we answer as much as possible from our soul perspective. If money is one of the most important things needed today for spiritual work, what is the factor which at present is deflecting it away from the work of the hierarchy? We try to give a soul-enlightened answer to this according to our own experience. Next question: what is my personal attitude towards money? Do I regard it as a great and possible spiritual asset, or do I think of it in material terms? And there are, alternatives to the materialistic thinking. Money for light, money for love, and money for the will of God, bringing in the divine plan. Number 3. What is my personal responsibility in regard to money, which passes through my hands? Am I handling it as a disciple of the Masters should handle it? The ancient legend of the Hydra enters here, And there is one head of the Hydra which deals with a kind of slavery to desire and to money. And we have to see whether, in trying to be Hercules, we are working on the defeat of this head of the Hydra. If we were subject to this difficulty, this abuse of resources, really, what weaknesses would be demonstrating in our approach to the use of money? Would we spend unwisely? Would we spend in excess for the non-essential? Would we overlook right expenditure for the essential? We have to find a way to overcome this very great glamour that has so many billions of people in thrall. So what do you consider essential? And can we discriminate between the essential and non-essential and spend accordingly? Now we ponder on the redemption of humanity through the right use of money. And we visualize money in the world today as, firstly, concretized energy, at present largely used for purely material purposes and for the satisfaction where the individual is concerned of purely personal desire. There is a great divine plan, and it will bring about the elevation of the kingdom of humanity and the other lower kingdoms. And it will bring human beings to the door of the fifth kingdom of nature with its expanded possibilities. Are we spending so as to make this real? And then we visualize money as a great stream of flowing golden substance, passing out of the control of the forces of materialism and into the control of the forces of light. Out of the darkness into the hands of the Christ and his senior workers and his disciples, his aspirants, his members of the new group of world servers, his men and women of goodwill. And then we say the following invocative prayer with focused mental concentration and from a heartfelt desire to meet spiritual demands. O Thou, in whom we live and move and have our being, the power that can make all things new, turn to spiritual purposes the money in the world. Touch the hearts of men everywhere, so that they may give to the work of the hierarchy that which has hitherto been given to material satisfaction. The new group of world servers needs money in large quantities. I ask that the needed vast sums may be made available. May this potent energy of thine be in the hands of the forces of light. And then we visualize the work to be done by those groups which claim your present allegiance, any group which you know is attempting to carry out the hierarchical plan. And through the creative imagination and by an act of the will, we see untold and unlimited sums of money pouring into the hands of those who seek to do the Master's work. And then we say aloud, with conviction and emphasis, He for whom the whole world waits has said that whatsoever shall be asked in His name, and with faith in the response will see it accomplished. And we remember at the same time that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And money is substantial to so much that must be accomplished correctly on the physical plane in line with the divine plan. Now, we ask the needed money for, and we choose which projects, which groups we want to direct the request towards. So I ask the needed money for and I can demand it because from the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. And then, in our creative imagination, we prepare to give our offering to the Christ. It's as if we are gathered together at the feet of the avatar of love, and that which we have designated, that which we have prepared, saved, directed towards his work, we present imaginatively to him. And then we say together, "We have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya, be with us." Now we close with a careful consideration of our own responsibility to the plan and perhaps that of our group. And we plan our weekly financial cooperation with Hierarchy. And we are to be practical and realistic, and to know that if we do not give, we may not ask, for we have no right to evoke that which we do not share. So how will we cooperate financially with Hierarchy? In the name of the Christ and for his sake, and with faith in the response. We attempt to feel true love sweeping through us, and we have the fixed intention to express this love to all whom we may contact. It is the great, attractive, and selfless agent in world affairs. And every week we plan, to offer to whatever project or organization may deeply interest us because of its cooperation with the divine plan. We plan to offer our gift rhythmically. So let us sound the Om 3 times, precipitating love, wisdom into the worlds of the threefold personality. Well, thank you, friends, for being here and for working at this most needed project. And I'm just going to play a little something from the Reappearance of the Christ oratorio, the Return of the Christ oratorio, and we'll be preparing for next week when we will begin with the morning schedule for the Ask programs. So lots of love and many blessings to you, and we will persist.